just
This meeting is being recorded.
great. Now, what we say will be for posterity. Just want to give you a little background of the shell ceremony, and I'm basically taking this from our website, which has just tons of interesting information. The Christian legend has it that when the apostles of Jesus divided the world into missionary zones, the Iberian Peninsula fell to James. And 7th and 8th century documents suggest that he spent a number of years preaching there before returning to Jerusalem, where in the year 44 CE, he was beheaded by King Herod Agrippa. After his martyrdom, a popular belief arose which says that St. James' followers carried his body to the coast and put it into a stone boat. The boat was guided by angels and carried by the wind beyond the Pillars of Hercules, which we know as the Strait of Gibraltar, to land in northern Spain at Padrón, which is near Finisterre. The significance of the shell ceremony has a number of different explanations, and as with many myths, the details change depending on who's telling the story. One version is that during St. James' boat journey, it arrived near Finisterre as a wedding was taking place. The bridegroom was on horseback, and upon seeing this mysterious ship approaching, the horse spooked, plunging the horse and the rider in the sea. Through miraculous intervention, the horse emerged from the waves, and both the horse and the rider were covered in cockle shells. Another version substitutes a knight for the bridegroom. But regardless of the version of events, Santiago had performed his miracle. Another option is that the symbol may have come into being simply because pilgrims visiting Santiago de Compostela had ready access to an abundance of seashells. Perhaps enough pilgrims returned home with them as souvenirs that the seashell eventually became a symbol of the pilgrimage. But whichever story you choose to believe, it's a fact that the scallop shell remains the symbol of St. James in the Camino. And today, pilgrims carry shells as symbols of their intention or devotion. So it's a practice in American pilgrims to have these shell ceremonies. We had one at our national gathering just 2 weeks ago, where we gave shells to folks who were embarking on their first Camino. And our 60 chapters across the nation this time of year are having shell ceremonies as people who participate in their chapter activities make their way back to the Camino. So that's what we're getting ready to do. Allison, did you want to invite people to share?
I do. So what we'd like to do at this point is if you would take a moment in the chat, maybe if you feel comfortable, tell us who you are, maybe where you are, and what your Camino plans are for this year.
This is Don and Lisa D'Alessandro. I don't know if you can hear us. We're from South Jersey, and we are going to start our first Camino on May 11th, I guess, or 10th out of St. John.
All right, thank you, Dawn. And we've got lots of folks in the chat over here. Eileen is walking her first. We have David. David's actually already in Spain, which is fantastic. He's on the Camino, sorry. We have some folks from Wisconsin who are walking in August. We have someone leaving in September from Denver. We have a couple people who are walking the Française. People walking in May, in July. A couple of other July walkers. Camino Norte, yay.
Put it in the chat, or do you want us?
The chat would be great.
What's that?
The chat would be great.
Okay.
We've got some people from New York, from the Dallas area.
Hey, I see somebody from Lancaster, Pennsylvania, where I am. Hi, Beth.
We've got another Texan.
My name is Alicia Garcia, and my son also is there. We're going to be walking the Camino in May 14th, and we're going to do the coastal website, and we have lots of questions.
Oh, right. Well, that's great. Well, hopefully, if you can get connected with one of our local chapters, that may help you. And also our website has lots of great information as well. Oh my gosh, we have so many answers in here. We have New Hampshire, DC. Sorry, I'm not catching everybody because there's a lot of folks on this call. We have Idaho, Alaska. Wow. Kansas City, New York. Oh, another Texas person. Leaving tomorrow for Madrid. This is fantastic. We've got all kinds of routes here. We've got the Norte, the Francés, the Portuguese. This is wonderful.
I see the Primitivo.
Oh, okay, yes. All right. We've got a few headed from Madrid. Oh, I see people are commenting back. That's great. Fantastic. All right. I think the answers are kind of slowing down in the chat, but if you still want to enter information or whatever in the chat, you are welcome to do that. And Steve, I'm going to go ahead and turn it over to you. Oh, and Angela.
Yeah, great. Thanks. So we're going to do the shell ceremony now, and this is how it's going to work. On the screen, you see the Beatitudes of the Pilgrim. And Angela is going to read the Spanish version, and then I'll invite all of us to respond on mute, reading the English version. After that, I'll invite you to, if you have a shell, to put it on, or if you're with somebody, to put the shell on each other, and I'll say the presentation of shells. And following that, Joe is going to lead us in singing Utrea, and you're welcome to join along on mute. So I'm going to turn it over to Angela, and we'll begin with the Beatitudes of the Pilgrim.
Thank you. Bienaventurado eres, peregrino, si descubres que el camino te abre los ojos a lo que no se ve.
Blessed are you, pilgrim, if you find that the Camino opens your eyes to the unseen.
Bienaventurado eres, peregrino, si lo que más te preocupa no es llegar, sino llegar con los otros.
Blessed are you, pilgrim, if what concerns you is not arriving, but arriving with the others.
Bienaventurado eres, peregrino, cuando contemplas el camino y lo descubres lleno de nombres y de amaneceres.
Blessed are you, pilgrim, when you contemplate the sights of the Camino and find them full of names and new dawns.
Bienaventurado eres, peregrino, si tu mochila se va vaciando de cosas y tu corazón no sabe dónde colgar tantas emociones.
Blessed are you, pilgrim, if your backpack empties of things as your heart doesn't know where to fit so many emotions.
Bienaventurado eres, peregrino, si tú descubres que un paso atrás para ayudar a otro vale más que 100 hacia adelante sin mirar a tu lado.
Blessed are you, pilgrim, if you discover that a step backwards to help another is more valuable than 100 forward without awareness of those at your sides.
Bienaventurado eres, peregrino, cuando te faltan palabras para agradecer todo lo que te sorprende en cada recodo del camino.
Blessed are you, pilgrim, when you have no words to give thanks for all the wonders in every nook of the Camino.
Bienaventurado eres, peregrino, si buscas la verdad y haces tu camino una vida, y de tu vida un camino, en busca de quién es el camino, la verdad y la vida.
Blessed are you, pilgrim, if you seek truth and make of your Camino a life, and of your life a Camino after him who is the way, the life, and the truth.
Bienaventurado eres, peregrino, si en el camino te encuentras contigo mismo y te regalas un tiempo sin prisas para no descuidar la imagen de tu corazón.
Blessed are you, pilgrim, if on the Camino you meet yourself and give yourself the gift of time without hurry, so that you not neglect the image of your heart.
Bienaventurado eres, peregrino, si descubres que el camino tiene mucho de silencio, y el silencio de oración, y la oración de encuentro con el Padre que te espera.
Blessed are you, pilgrim, if you find that the Camino is rich in silence, and the silence is rich with prayers, and the prayers are encounters with the Father that awaits you.
Bienaventurado eres, peregrino, si descubres que el camino comienza cuando se acaba.
Blessed are you, pilgrim, if you discover that the true Camino begins at its end. And now I would invite you, if you have a shell, to place it around your neck or the neck of the person with you, and hear these words. For you, immortal pilgrim, now that you are on the Camino, may the love and peace of God be with you always. And may you, attentive to his voice, pass through the countryside sowing goodness. Receive this shell, the badge of a pilgrim, that all may recognize you as a pilgrim to Santiago de Compostela. Joe.
Tous les matins, nous prenons le chemin. Tous les matins, nous allons plus loin. Jour après jour, la route nous appelle. C'est la voie de Compostelle. Ultreia, ultreia, et suseia, Deus adjuvanos, chemin de terre, chemin de foi, voie millénaire de l'Europe, la voie lactée de Charlemagne. C'est le chemin de toujours de la jaquette. Ultreia, ultreia, Jesuseia, Deus adjuvanos, et tout là-bas au bout du continent, Monsieur Jacques nous attend, depuis toujours son sourire fixe, le soleil que me Finistère. Ultreia, ultreia, et suseia, Deus adjuvanos. Ultreia, ultreia, et suseia, Deus adjuvanos.
Thank you, Joe. We really appreciate it. We know that a lot of you are walking for the first time. So we did want to take questions because we do have some time. And I know that you may have questions about ideas or routes or things like that. And we definitely have some people who've walked on the call. So we're happy to do that. The easiest thing, because we have so many people, would be if you would raise your hand electronically through the Zoom system. It should be down at the bottom or the top of your Zoom screen there. If you would do that, or if you would put the question that you have in the chat, that would be very helpful for us so that we can help answer your question, because we want to get you guys some great information. Edgar.
Good morning, good afternoon, depending on your time zone. First time walking the Camino, we'll do so in 2 weeks, God willing. And the question I have is, I've already gotten my credential ahead of time. Do I need to do something once I get to St. John Pierre de Port to get it stamped there, or do I just start walking?
Yeah, Angela, do you want to take that one?
Sure. So the requirement for getting a Compostela at the end, when you reach Santiago, is that you have at least 2 stamps every day in the last 100 kilometers. If you plan to start walking in St. Jean-Pied-de-Port, you don't necessarily need stamps that at that early stage to still qualify for the Compostela, because you'd get them later on your journey. However, getting stamps is a really fun and wonderful part of the Camino, and it helps you connect with each place and you have a record of where you've been. So you can absolutely start off, a lot of people start at the Pilgrim office there in St. John, or their albergue or restaurants or whatever. So you don't have to do anything on the Camino, kind of like life. There's not that many things that you're required to do, but getting a stamp when you first start is often a nice way to begin your journey.
Thank you. Buen Camino.
Buen Camino.
All right, Joe, we had a question in the chat. How many months did folks prep in advance, and how many miles each day have you walked to do so? Will you take that one?
Well, there's pre-COVID and there's post-COVID. Before my first Camino, which was a, we were walking for five weeks on that. My prep was actually incorporated into my commute, where I would walk 2.6 miles to the bus every morning, take it out to my office. Sometimes during lunch, I'd take another hike for a mile or 2 in the woods, and then I'd do it backwards, another 2.6 coming back. And some days I would actually walk all the way home from my office, which would be about 9 miles. So that afternoon, so that was pretty much the type of training that I did for the first Camino. I don't have a commute anymore. I'm one of those work from home folks. So I have to admit that before the Portuguese, I didn't do a lot of training, and I paid for it with blisters and other things. So, but doing a few miles a day is probably helpful. And I live on the top of a real big hill, so I really had to. It incorporated some hill walking as well. So, yeah.
Thank you. And I'll just jump in and say too, I live in a very flat place in Texas, and we did the Norte, and that was a shock. But we did a lot of treadmill walking, a lot of just around our neighborhood walking, a lot. We have a pretty lake that's kind of close to us. So we did a lot of those kinds of walks as well. So just getting the miles up and doing it day after day, that's an important part. So if you guys have answers to these questions too that you see in the chat, you're welcome to answer them. Steve, we had a question. What's the best way to get from the Santiago airport to Sarria? Would you like to take that one?
No, because I haven't done that before. What I would do is, unless if there's somebody who has an answer to that, has done that, maybe they could respond. If not, what I would do, I would check the bus schedules and or the train schedules, because I think there are trains on Renfe that go from Santiago to Sarria. So that's what I would suggest. Has anybody done it?
No, I haven't gone to Sarria from Santiago. The closest I think would be when we were at Ribaristo, probably. And yeah, the bus is what I did from Santiago.
Yeah, and
to
yeah. And so you check the bus. It's Monbus, MONBUS is one of the bus lines that runs. That's probably the one that's going to run from Santiago to Sarria.
All right, thank you. We also had a question in here. We're hearing the Camino is very busy. Any tips? So Angela, Joe, Steve, anybody want to offer tips?
Well, where it's really busy is from Sarria to Santiago, because that's the most popular route. And the Camino is like so much else in life. A lot of it's kind of what you make it. I mean, some people who really want lots of solitude, they get a little upset with the crowds as they increase from Sarria. Other people love that, and it's one of the wonderful things is that all the different groups that you meet. Angela and I were each at Ribadiso, which is right in the middle of that route this past summer, and there were plenty of periods when it was lots of solitude and you could just walk and you wouldn't see anybody. Other times, you know, you'd get caught up with a group of students on retreat or whatever. But again, it's what you make it. But if you want to avoid all that and you still want to get your Compostela, there are about 6 other routes you could take too. The Invierno, the Sana Brace, there's information about all of these on American Pilgrims website. And you could get your credential stamped along the way and still get your Compostela if you want to avoid the route from Sarria. But before Sarria, it's not nearly as crowded. I just got back from Santiago this week, and the numbers of people in Santiago is dramatically higher than it was last year. People kind of making up for lost time after COVID and after the Holy Year. But
yeah, I'd also add, if you're really worried, you can sometimes call in advance before you arrive, you know, a day or two before you anticipate arriving in a town. You can make a reservation at like a private albergue if it's available. Booking.com also lists some private albergues as well as like small hotels and whatnot. That's not always the style that I prefer on my Caminos, but you know, if for some reason I'm worried, or if there's like, if you start walking with the Camino family and there's 8 of you, then that's when the pre-booking starts to be more helpful. Also, another tip, depending on how you're feeling, is to start your day early. When you start the day early, then, you know, if you have a moderate pace, I can walk kind of slowly, but even with me walking slowly, starting early, I still finish pretty early. And in both pre and post COVID, I've always been able to get a bed. So I would say, like, try not to worry, but if you are feeling concerned, you can book lodging a little bit in advance.
I'd say another strategy that some people use, although it's not foolproof, none of these are foolproof, is if you're using a guidebook and you're concerned about the busyness at the end of the stages that are set out in the guidebook, you can look at some of those places in between and look at stopping mid-stage as well. That is another strategy. So either a little earlier or even a little later.
That's probably the biggest point, actually. If you don't stop where everyone else is stopping, you'll be fine. And I guess, can 3 people find beds in a room? Yeah, without pre-booking, probably. I mean, it's like it depends. Like I would say, like, so I was there last summer for like St. James Day weekend, and that's like the St. James Day weekend on a Holy Year is probably as like crowded as it'll ever be. And even then, it wasn't, I mean, like things were full, but yeah, if you're a little bit outside of the stages, then there's a lot less worry.
That's great. Thanks, Angela. I'm going to take the next 2 questions. One of them is about technology and buying a burn phone in Spain, any service to avoid or recommendation. I'll tell you, we did it 2 different ways. We bought a Spanish SIM card and just put it into our existing phone, and that worked great. So that's one thing that we did. The second time that we walked was last summer, and we just turned on our phones, and we have Verizon, and it worked the exact same as it did in the States. So we've done it both ways, and it worked fine both ways. So that's my input, but I do want to open it to the others. Steve, Joe, or Angela, do you have any other thoughts on technology?
Verizon lets you use it at no cost in Europe. Most other U.S. carriers don't.
No, we do pay a fee.
Oh, you do pay a fee?
We do
Oh,
pay a
okay.
fee.
Like I'm with AT&T and it's $10 a day. But I like the SIM card, and now with eSIM, it's really easy. You have to pay more for an eSIM in Spain, but I have an eSIM on my US number, and I'm going to keep my Spanish SIM card in there, so I can just go to my settings and switch back and forth. When I'm going to Spain, I can recharge the Spanish SIM, and for $30 or 30 euros, unless you're really going to spend a lot of time online, that's going to be more than you need while you're over there.
Yeah,
The next,
oh,
go ahead.
I was going to say the Pilgrims in my chapter had a lot of success with eSIMs. The only caveat I'd put on that is that some of the carriers, if you're financing your phone through them, and so you don't own the phone outright yet, won't let you unlock it to use the eSIM. And another thing that I think bears noting is that for communication between pilgrims on the Camino, I would say just about everybody is using WhatsApp, which you can use on Wi-Fi when you have it available. And you can use that to contact folks back home. So do make sure that you have that installed on your phone. A lot of the businesses will advertise their, and albergues and lodging will have their WhatsApp contact information listed.
And so many places have Wi-Fi that if you just want to wait until if you want to use WhatsApp and wait till you get to a place that has Wi-Fi, you could get by without having cellular service.
Yeah. We had a question here. We're traveling through Paris, and in the past you could get a stamp at Notre Dame. Anybody know if you can still get a stamp? I was at Notre Dame about 2 weeks ago. I did not see a way to get a stamp, but I do want to say I was not looking for a way to get a stamp. So I would maybe check their website. When we were there, it's cordoned off like a construction zone. I mean, it is a construction zone, but it looked like it went all the way around the church to me. So I don't know how that would happen, but you could certainly check on their website. I'm sure they have somebody that could be answering emails or something like that if you were particularly interested in starting and getting a stamp at that particular cathedral. Folks are putting information in here. Joe very kindly posted the shell ceremony. So if anybody would like a copy of that, he has that. I've also posted a couple of links in here too about information on routes and also how to find our local chapters, because you may find yourself with more questions as you continue planning your Camino, and you want other people's input on that as well. We have a couple other questions in here. Realistically, can 3 people find room or beds together from Sadia to Santiago without pre-booking? Does anybody want to take that one? Angela, Steve, maybe?
I think you can. You just have to be flexible. The whole getting off the common stages is probably the best advice that I've heard so far of what we've talked about. Arriving early, like thinking like Steve, so Steve and his wife volunteered right adjacent to when I volunteered in Ribarizo this past summer. And the municipal albergue at Ribarizo has 60 some beds?
64.
Yeah. So a group of 3, even bigger groups could totally, and it was a municipal, so you couldn't reserve it. The municipal albergues, you're not allowed to reserve in the first place. So all of those depend on when your group arrives. And if your group arrives early before the albergue fills, you absolutely get as many beds as you need.
But we were there the last 2 weeks in August, and it wasn't filled. Not one night was filled.
Yeah. And
Yeah.
and this is proving the point. Artua is the bigger town where most pilgrims stay, and Ribarizo is just before. So if you're willing to stay in a village just before or just after where most people stay, the competition for beds is a lot less severe.
And John Brierly, who we had at our holiday open house in December, said himself, he's the kind of the guru of the Camino, said that he just puts those in there because you have to have stages somewhere, and he encourages you not to be bound to those. Yeah.
We have a question about transportation from getting back to Porto from Santiago. And is it relatively easy to do that? I've always found transportation in Spain to be quite easy, but I do want to open that to others in case you, Steve or Joe or Angela, anybody want to say anything?
Planes, trains, and automobiles.
You said transportation for where? I'm sorry.
From Santiago to Porto, Portugal?
It's very easy. It's very easy. So I did that in October. There are several buses a day that leave from the bus station in Santiago. I think it's probably 3.5 hours, something like that, and it drops you right at the airport in Porto. My flight was the next morning, but there was there were 1 or 2 hotels right across the street from the airport. Use the crosswalks because it is a busy area, but yeah, it was very, very easy to get over there. I stayed in, a lot of people in Santiago stay in Seminario Menor, which is one of the big albergues up on the hill, and I think it was probably about 1 kilometer or so from there over to the bus station. It's very close, very easy.
Okay. We have someone on here who's actually on the Norte right now, and said that competition for accommodations was high. So that's just something to keep in mind. It is, I mean, this is the Camino season. This is the heavy walking season that we're headed into. I do also want to say the Norte is not going to have the number of accommodations that you'll find on other routes, because the Norte is not as populated and as heavily walked as some of the other routes too. So that's there too. Oh, some people saying thank you for the ceremony. Y'all are most welcome. I love shell ceremonies. They're amazing. Angela, maybe you can help with this one. Are all the municipals open this year? Last year, several were not, and people weren't aware of that. Do you want to speak to that?
I don't know definitively. It seemed as though most of the albergues, the municipals, had reopened, but like Steve, you were just there, right? Like you talked.
I was just at the meeting of the federation that runs a lot of those. It's kind of the umbrella group for a lot. Not a word about any closings. I think everybody's going full steam. So I wouldn't worry about that.
Okay.
Unless some have just some private albergues may have shut down because, you know, the financial loss they had during COVID, but the municipals, they're all open.
We have a question about weather along the Portuguese coastal route in the last couple of weeks of September. Joe, do you want to take that one?
Oh yeah. Well, I felt like I really lucked out when I walked. That's exactly when I walked this past fall, was the end of September, beginning of October. It was warm walking along the coast and very sunny, but I don't think I had to pull out my raincoat once. Now that might be a little bit of an aberration. And if you choose to do the coastal route all the way up, I know that wind can be a big issue. The other thing I'll mention is I know some of our pilgrims walked just a little bit earlier in September, and they caught the tail end of a hurricane that had the remnants of which had blown through. So I guess it wasn't as pleasant then, but it was quite warm. I never had to pull out any warm weather gear or anything during that time. So
that's great. We had a question about knowing when the Botafumeiro will swing in the cathedral, and to my knowledge, that information is not posted. Does anybody know differently than me?
I think the cathedral posts the holy days that it swings, but it swings quite a bit more than that if a group comes in and makes a donation to have it swung. So it's really hard to know when. I got to smell the Botafumeiro the last time, but it had swung at the mass before I was in the cathedral. It had swung at the what's it, 9:30, I think. I think it had swung at the earlier morning mass, but I don't think that's a guarantee. So
yeah. We have a question about downloading the Wise Pilgrim app. I guess there's been some challenges with it. I don't know of any. We loved Wise Pilgrim, so I don't know of any challenges. Does anybody? No? Okay. Okay. Oh, yes, there is some comments about SIM cards. So if you're going to use a SIM card or whatever, just make sure that your phone is able to do that. Oh, I'll take this question. I just read that ATMs are charging for withdrawals and some are expensive. Yes, they are enormously expensive. We usually wait until we get over to Europe to pull out any kind of cash. that's not what everybody does, but that's what we do. And we were charged the most we've ever been charged. I did contact our bank and they refunded my bank's portion, but the remainder was a percentage of what we pulled out, and it was far more than I've ever paid. But my bank
Yeah,
would not refund that.
I pulled out 100 euros last week and I got charged 7.5 euros. Again, my bank refunded about $3.50 of that, but I mean, that's
Yeah.
still a 4.5%.
Yeah.
But
And I will say that Spain does operate on more cash than we're used to in the U, or at least that I'm used to in the US. But that seemed to be changing when I was there a couple weeks ago. A lot more places were taking cards than I feel like have in the past. So that shift is happening as well. Does anybody want to take a question about bed bugs? Any way to avoid, or ideas on how to not get those little critters with
well,
you?
I haven't heard a lot about bed bugs lately. Most albergues now are putting sheets, either plastic sheets or paper sheets on the beds, and I think that's really cut down on the prevalence of bed bugs.
Great. Joe, we have a question. Compared to the Frances, how busy is the coastal Portuguese the end of May, early June? Do you want to speak to that?
I haven't been there early May, end of June. I couldn't say compared to, and South Texas, I can't compare it to South Texas either, because I don't know if I've been to South Texas that time of year.
Sorry, to the Frances.
Oh, to the Frances. Oh,
Yeah,
somebody.
sorry.
Oh, I saw the other question about
Sorry.
compared to South Texas weather.
I can take that one. You take this one. I'll take
the
that one.
Portuguese. It's less busy than the Frances. I mean, the Frances gets, I think, 60% of the traffic of all of the Caminos. So that having been said, I mean, there's marginally less accommodation, but you'll find some opportunities for solitude along the Portuguese. If I can just say one thing about the bed bugs too. I mean, this isn't for everyone. Not everyone likes to do this, but I will say that one thing that we did before our first trip was we treated our backpacks and some of our stuff with permethrin, which hikers will know that is one way to it's non-toxic to humans, but it is supposed to help keep away some of those critters, and using a silk sleeping bag liner as your sleeping thing, because a lot of you, if you've done the Camino, you know that you don't usually bring a whole full-fledged sleeping bag with you. Just a thin silk sleeping bag liner is sufficient, and the silk ones will resist those critters too. Just a couple.
No, that's great. Thanks. Back to our Notre Dame question. Someone very kindly looked up some information, so that is in the chat if you would like to check there. The question here is, do I need to book a train or bus from Santiago to Madrid, or can I walk up and get tickets? We've always booked ahead, but I'll let the others speak to that.
I've done both. I have never had a problem walking up, but in the year of our Lord 2023, when I have my smartphone with me, it's been pretty easy to utilize the online services to make my tickets in advance the same way I would here. On the other, I mean, I guess to me personally, if I already know that I have to get back to Madrid or wherever by a certain day, and I'm worried about it because I don't want to miss my flight, I personally see no reason not to go ahead and book my plane ticket or my bus ticket in advance. Alternatively, when I have been more flexible, it's been because I had a more flexible travel. I had more flexibility in my schedule in the first place, and maybe I was adjusting to be with other people or friends or family or whatever. But if you're worried about, again, like catching a flight or something like that, like say lock it in early. But that's just my conservative approach.
And I'll say when I went from Santiago to Madrid, I actually flew, and I booked it I think less than a week ahead of time, and I think the flight was a little over $30.
Yeah,
this was 4 years ago. So, but and remember, they're not going to let you take your hiking poles, but you can have that issue transatlantic anyway. If you're looking for a place to leave them, the Pilgrim House, Terra Nova Pilgrim House on Rua Nova will accept the hiking poles for any other pilgrims who might be going on to Finisterre or somewhere who might be able to use them.
Thank you, Joe. Oh, and to add to that, like, yeah, flying is like absolutely the good way to get from Santiago back to Madrid. Iberia has like super cheap flights like from within the country. And like Joe said, you can book them pretty last minute. Once, maybe twice, I learned that I found the hard way that they are less flexible than some of the US airlines for some of those tickets. And so I have forfeited in my life at least one leg of a journey with Iberia, because they're like, they're kind of like Southwest, right? Like it can be super cheap, but like service can be, service reflects the price you pay. So it's a great option for the number of flights and the cost, but sometimes it's less flexible than is nice, would be nice.
We had a question about how to get tickets to get to the top of the cathedral. I did not go last year, but the people that I walked with went, and they just walked up and got tickets. I do believe they were timed, if I remember correctly. So you may want to go a little ahead or see if you can get them online, but they were able to get up, I think the next day that we were in town. I also just want to put a plug in for the Pilgrim Museum that's next to the cathedral. I really like that museum a lot. So I'm just putting a plug in for that too. Sorry, Steve,
So,
did you want to say something?
Well, yeah, we went to the top of the cathedral last year, and we got them ahead of time. And I would suggest doing that if you really if you're on a, like, you know, with Angela, if you're on a tight time schedule. But if you do it, make sure you take shoes with really good traction. I don't think they would allow it in the US. It's steep. And I mean, it's a great view, but and if you have a sort of fear of heights, you might want to think twice about it. But it's just make sure you have shoes with good traction.
Yeah. We had a question about taking a jacket in late May. That I walked the Norte in late May, and I did have a jacket. I will say that when we were walking the Norte, the temperature is cold in the morning, you know, hot in the afternoons, and then cold again at night. And so that's different than in Dallas. It tends to be just, you know, really hot or really cold the whole day. So that was different for me, but definitely layers is a great way to go for that. We have some folks who are posting information about money and ATMs and things like that. So I just want to point that out as well. Weather in June for the coastal Portuguese compared to South Texas. I've not walked the Portuguese, but I will say that you should probably expect it to be more rainy and colder than it would be in South Texas is my guess for that. Okay, there's information. Oh, Joe posted about the Botafumeiro, which is in there. And oh, Angela also posted some resources as well. I did put the Pilgrim House link that Steve was talking about in the chat as well. And yeah, they've got some great information in there. So I think we'll take this one as our last question so that we can have some time to get some last words from Steve too. What time do most people usually start walking? And when do most cafes and restaurants close for siesta? Steve, do you want to talk about that since you were just there?
Yeah, well, I wasn't walking the Camino, but I mean, people will start as early as 5. And then sometimes when Angela and I were at Ribadiso, we had to rouse people out at 8, you know. So again, it kind of depends on what your schedule is. If you want to get ahead of the crowd so you can get a place without a reservation, you probably want to start early. I'd say most people are out the door by 8. Again, you know, if you're going to walk in the wintertime when the weather is or the fall, Spain is so far west that if you're going to walk in September or October, it's not going to get light until like 8 o'clock. So you want to keep that in mind. And what was the other half of that question, Allison? When do people start walking? And
oh, the siesta times.
Places are 2 to 4 or 2 to 4:30 is kind of siesta time. A lot of restaurants will Well, a lot of restaurants don't start serving lunch until 2, so it kind of depends on what you're looking for. But like the bars, some bars and cafes will be closed from 2 to 4. But if you're going to have a real traditional Spanish lunch, they won't open until 1:30 or 2. So it just kind of depends on what you're looking for, and that's more in the smaller towns. If you're in Madrid or maybe even Burgos or Leon, they tend to follow kind of a more schedule like we do. But and grocery stores may close like between 2 and 4 for siesta time.
All right. And Steve, as we kind of finish up our time together, do you want to tell us a little bit about American Pilgrims and answer
well,
any of those kinds of things?
Sure. Well, first of all, I want to thank all of you who are members of American Pilgrims and encourage those of you who've yet to join to do that. Our mission is to support foster the enduring tradition of the Camino, and we do that by supporting the infrastructure. Your membership dues and your donations go to help with these keep these donativo albergues up and running, and they also help with the way marking of the trails along the way. So whether you stay, no matter what kind of accommodation you stay in, you're going to benefit from that. Plus other organizations that help make pilgrims welcome and ease the way. So we would love to have you join with us in that. We also have the 60 different chapters around the country that I mentioned, and your membership in American Pilgrims helps support those, as well as provide information through a number of different means that we have, particularly our website, our quarterly publication, La Concha. It would just be great to have you to be a part of this community of pilgrims. Credentials, many of you have ordered your credentials through our website. They're free. We're the only organization in the US that's accredited by the cathedral to issue those credentials. Allison, tell us about some events that are coming up in May.
Sure. We have an event in actually we have 2 events next week. One is Lynn Talbot is going to be talking to us about some of the cultural things that you can see in and around Santiago. So we're very excited about her. And then next Saturday, we have Andrew McCarthy, who is an actor and director who has just recently walked the Camino for the 2nd time, and he's got a book coming out. And so he is going to be talking with us next Saturday. Both of those events are member requirement. You have to have membership in American Pilgrims, but if you are interested in membership for American Pilgrims, I'll post that link to our chat as well.
Also, there are volunteer opportunities, many ways to give back to the Camino. If you're a member, one of the things that we do as American Pilgrims is we train hospitaleros. We provide volunteer opportunities at the Ribadizo albergue. We have lots of ways to contribute your literary skills through La Concha. On our webpage, there's a whole list of volunteer opportunities, both in the United States and in Spain. And then our YouTube, Facebook, LinkedIn communities. Joe heads up our communications team. We have about 37,000 folks participating in our Facebook community. And lots of things going up on YouTube. So invite you to learn more about the Camino and the community of pilgrims through these ways. So
I also just want to jump in. We just announced that we are giving away about $90,000 in grant money to different albergues and nonprofits in Europe. And so your membership dues go directly back to supporting the Camino. So I just wanted to jump in and say that too.
Great.
With that, if you have any questions, our website is a great source of resources. If you need to connect with a local chapter, or if you have any questions about anything related to membership or anything, you are welcome to reach out to us. And we are so grateful for you sharing your time with us today. Thank you to Steve, Angela, and Joe, who are our wonderful leaders today. We are so grateful for all of our volunteers. We wish all of you a very, very buen Camino, and we hope you have a wonderful, wonderful time.
Buen Camino.